Welcome to the Any Key Video Show, the place and platform for independent creatives. I'm your host, Kenny Any Key Moore. This is a jazz music episode. My guest has a new project out with his band. But before we start the show, would you do two things for me? First, go like and subscribe to the Minds of Creativity Facebook page and YouTube channel so you can check out the rest of the content and get alerts when new shows are available. Second, connect with me on social media at Coach_ANY, on Twitter, TikTok, Clubhouse, Instagram, and YouTube. So you can follow the show and keep up with the rest of the stuff that I'm doing. All right, my guest is ready and I'm ready, so let's get started. So before my guest comes on to talk about his new project, let's watch a clip of him in the band. Here's Ulysses Owens Jr. and Generation Y on the Any Key Video Show.
Generation Y is a band full of incredible, young, emerging talent. These students are incredible. They all are beginning their careers and doing wonderful things. And so I feel like Generation Y is that ensemble and that foundation where they're getting a chance to play with someone like myself who's more experienced. And by the time they get to, maybe a couple years in the band, they're ready now to launch out on their own.
The leader is Ulysses Owens, who's a great drummer, one that I've known since he was a youngster. He's paid his dues by playing with some older cats, and now he's paying it forward.
Now joining me is Ulysses Owens Jr. He's a musician, he's an artist, he's an educator, and an author from Jacksonville, Florida. He's released critically acclaimed jazz projects. He teaches jazz students and is a touring artist and musician. You just saw the new project he's released, so let's bring him on to talk about it.
Hey, brother. How you doing?
Hey, yeah, welcome back. Thanks for being on. How's everything?
It's good, man. I'm actually at Juilliard right now in one of the practice rooms, so you may hear somebody playing a sonata in the background.
Awesome. Oh, man, it's no better than that. We creating and they're creating. I love it.
Hey, man, I love your trailer that you played. I'm glad I have a better video quality now. Than that.
Hey, listen, we both do.
I was like, oh my God. Thank God for progress.
I'm telling you.
Terrible. You were so gracious.
Listen, mine was bad too, so we was both wanted to come up. You know what I'm saying?
It's all right, man. But I'm glad to see how many artists you work with, and it's a blessing to see how you've grown, man. So thanks for wanting to chat with me.
Yeah, for sure, man. And that's what this is about. So look, let's get right to it. So let me ask you this: how did your love of jazz music come about?
That's a great question. I fell in love with the music when I was about 13 years old. I was actually introduced through my cousin, Kevin Sibley. He's a great B3 Hammond organist in the church. And he played an Oscar Peterson record, ironically for me, of the tune Honeysuckle Rose. Okay. And I remember hearing Oscar's fast, bebop chops. And I was like, man, that sounds different. Because I had heard, growing up here, listening to John P. Key and, James Cleveland and
sure.
Orlando Draper or whatever. So I'd heard pianists just more like pad and play chords.
Right.
So to hear somebody like sort of,
quote
unquote, tickling the ivories, that was unique. So that I was like, all right, like, okay, there's something about that. Then I did a report in elementary school on Miles Davis's Bitches Brew, because I'd heard about Miles Davis. He was actually alive, when I was in elementary school. But the bug really got me when I knew I wanted to go to college in New York. So my mom and my dad let me come and visit my cousin in New York. So as part of that, we went to Manhattan School of Music, met with the great John Riley, great jazz drum educator. And long story short, he heard me, said, man, you sound good. You don't sound like a jazz drummer. He said, you sound like a gospel drummer. And he said, if you're going to come and study at my school and play for me, you got to shift your playing. So I said, well, what do I do? I'll do whatever you tell me to do. He says, well, go listen to Philly Joe Jones on Miles Davis's record, Milestones. And that was when I got the bug. Like I heard the sound of Philly Joe Jones, that first track, Dr. Jekyll. And I was like, that's what I want to do. That's what I want to sound like. simultaneously, I heard Lewis Nash. There's a great J.J. Johnson record called Let's Hang Out with Lewis Nash on half of it, and the other half is Victor Lewis.
Wow.
And I heard Lewis, and same feeling that came to me with Philly Joe, I was like, whoa, that's what I'm supposed to do. So that was, between the ages of 16, I would say, and 17 is when I got bit by the bug, and I knew that was going to be part of my destiny.
Okay. It's interesting that we have a similar in terms of love for jazz. For me, it was kind of Blue that got me. And So What was the one that got me in terms of Miles Davis. That's the one that put me on. And, you're in New York. I went to Rutgers, Newark.
Nice.
And yeah, and took history of jazz there and just fell in love with the music. Then took jazz piano the next semester. And then ever since then, it's just been a love affair with jazz. So we got a kind of similar story.
I love that, man. Miles turns everybody on.
For sure. One of the goats for sure. So you're in New York now, and you split your time between New York and Jacksonville. So talk about the work that you're doing in both cities.
Man, so first of all, beyond the work, I have an incredible almost 2.5-year-old toddler boy, Kyler St. Owens. And so when my son was born, actually before he was born, I'd already started living in Jacksonville. I've been running a nonprofit organization that my family and I own called Don't Miss a Beat. It's a performing arts nonprofit, with a focus on musical theater, particularly with an emphasis on kids of color. And kids that come from challenging socioeconomic backgrounds. So we've had that organization now, man, we're going into our 16th year. So I'd always been going back and forth. I lived in New York from 2001. And when I got to the year 2019, it was a very, I won't belabor the point, but it was a very tumultuous year for me, where when it's time for you, and you're spiritual. So when it's time for you to shift into a season, you start feeling uncomfortable with the old. And that's basically what was happening. And so one day, one day I was in prayer, and I heard God say to me, "You need to move to Florida, move back home." And I'm like, "What? God, how am I going to do that?" Like, I have this moniker or reputation as being like a New York musician. And I just remember God just saying to me, like, "Let me figure out the rest. This is where you're supposed to be." So long story short, by the end of 2019, I moved back to Jacksonville, and in March 2020, the pandemic happened. So anyway, yeah, it's crazy. So anyway, from November 2019, I've been commuting back and forth and just doing it quietly. Like nobody knew that I was like doing this. And then what the pandemic did was it allowed me to be honest and say, "Hey, actually, I live in Florida." So anyway, so that's the work I do there in New York. I'm on faculty at the Juilliard School. I've been here for 7 years. I also have my production company, UOJ Productions, where I produce a lot of artists. And then, man, I play gigs, but since the pandemic, it hasn't been that many gigs. I pretty much do Jazz and Lincoln Center and a couple other things twice a year.
Okay.
And then for the most part, my gigs are on the road. So once my son was born, I was like, he is not going to have an absent dad. So I literally tell people, like, I'm going to teach Tuesday and Thursday. So I'm on a plane Tuesday morning. I'm either on a plane, Thursday night or Friday morning, headed back to Florida. And that's my life, man. It's getting crazy and it's a lot, but it's what works for me now. So that's the short of what I'm doing.
Yeah, man. I think that what makes it work, it seems like, is that you have a routine and you have a set schedule. So that way, your son has his time and he knows when dad is going to be around and knows when dad's going to, be away. And that, helps with in terms of him knowing that you have that consistent presence. I think that's so important.
Yeah. And I mean, do you have kids?
I have a stepson. He's grown.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, the thing about kids, and I find, and you have a stepson, like boys, everyone needs their father, but I think in particular, like with my son, with him being so young, even though he's only 2.5, like he's now aware of who I am. And so my father's always been there for me. He's been a hard worker. And I definitely dealt with a similar thing where my dad, he's a retired firefighter.
Okay.
So my father had, he had he would have to be at the station like 24 hours on, 24 hours off. So I knew this idea of a father kind of being present, but also being active.
Sure.
And that's what I want, Kyler to know is like, hey, I love him. I'm here for him, but daddy's also working so you can do the things you do and have the things you have.
For sure. Hey, man, you got to provide.
Hey, brother, and I'm thankful that I have an incredible support system in his mother. She and I co-parent. My parents are just so wonderful, and so I'm really blessed. And it having them is what allows me to be able to fly back and forth and know that things won't be out of order, when I get
Yeah,
back.
man. Hey, it takes a village. So
So I'm
let's
grateful.
transition. Let's talk about the project. Now first tell me
Sure.
how did the Generation Y band get formed, and then talk about the process of creating a project with them.
So, man, the band got formed by one simple question from my manager, Miles Weinstein, who simply said to me, I was in between projects. I was just finishing my trio. I forget what I was working on with when last time I talked with you, but I had a trio
The
with
big
Joel
band.
Ross.
That was the big
Yeah, it was
band
big.
when
Yeah.
we talked. Yeah,
So I had a trio with Joel Ross and Ruben Rogers. The big band had done really well, but as you know, it's hard to book 15, 16 people.
sure.
So
And a lot
we
of
were in
logistics.
transition. Yeah, it's a lot. And so,
Yeah.
and the price, what it takes to get us where we need to
Right.
go.
Right.
So Miles came to me and he was like, Ulysses, I need something that I can sell that is small, that can move. And so I was like, and I was just burnt out. I was like, Miles, I don't know what. He was like, okay, what excites you when you play? What excites you? I said, man, the only thing that excites me these days is playing with young musicians. I said, because they
Mm,
aren't fully formed, and with whatever that's not fully formed in them, it reconnects with what's not fully formed in me, and the part of
sure.
me that's still growing, and it makes it fresh and exciting. He was like, okay, great. So we need you to start a young band. So he says, who are the musicians that you love? And so at the time, Alexa Tarantino was had just graduated. She was in my Juilliard ensemble. Philip Norris was just graduated from Juilliard. Drew Anderson just graduated from New School, and uh, Luther Allison, great pianist and drummer. Luther had just graduated from MSU. So I was like, man, these are the cats. I was like, that's who I want to play with. He said, okay. So he said, do you want to do a rehearsal? I said, nah, man, let's do a gig. So the Jazz Standard made that the Jazz Standard rest in peace, that club. He called up the Jazz Standard. He said, Seth, Ulysses has a new band. He just wants to try it out. So
Mm.
we did our first gig in 2019 in the spring. And it was raw, bro. It wasn't fully together,
Yeah,
but
because
it
you
was
didn't
something.
rehearse, so that was just
Right.
on the fly. Yeah.
It was something was there. So long story short, that's when Generation Y was born. But it took us a while. We got some gigs, figured it out. But once we got out of the pandemic and I got just more time, then the band shifted. We got Anthony Hervey in the band, and Alexa was starting to do her own thing with Cecile and all these great folks. And I got Sarah Hanahan in the band. That's when we got like that's when it became a thing. I was like, okay, now we got the ensemble. And then shortly thereafter, Corey Weeds reached out to me. He said, "Man, you want to record?" And so by that time, we've been together for 5 years. But it
Okay.
was born out of that, that kind of experience and what I wanted to accomplish and just what inspires me.
Yeah, and I think to your point is, well, the biggest thing that helps with creativity is inspiration. So if you're not inspired, it's hard to create. So the fact that you were able to locate and find that inspiration, I think, is what made it so easy. And then organically, you guys just over 5 years, just all of the
Yeah.
time, gigging and all of that stuff, it just organically happened.
Yeah. And the other piece too, I want to mention is that I thought about the great Art Buhena Blakey, um, who, when I moved to New York, there were several names I heard all the time. One was Art Blakey, another was Betty Carter.
Mhm.
Um,
Yes,
these were institutions,
sure.
and everybody that I was interacting with and playing with, they either played with Boo, which is short for Buhena, or they played with Betty. And so I kept saying to myself, well, what is the Art Blakey messengers, jazz messengers, and what is the Betty Carter uh, today? Where can these students join a band and spend a year or 2 years, and after that they can get their careers launched off the ground? And I looked around and there wasn't any. So I was like, well, you know what? My hope is that Generation Y can be that launching pad. And I have to say, it's already started that. I mean, Phil Norris is, he's playing with Josh Redman and Emmett Cohen and everybody. Alexa's, like I said, Cecile, she's in Winton's band now.
Awesome.
Drew is writing for films, and Luther
Awesome.
Allison's with Samara Joy now. So it's starting to become that. So I'm grateful.
Yeah, and you know, the I can understand why you would feel that way because you're creating a platform for them, for them, a launching pad for them. So them to be
Yeah.
able to go out and to be able to have a career and have something that they, tangible that they can go out into the industry. They got their product now with Generation Y. Now they got that on their resume, and now they can push that and go out and do their own thing. So I think that's great, man. I just think that's great.
It's a blessing, and it's what happened for me. When I joined Christian McBride's band, I'd already been working, but Christian McBride's band single-handedly launched my career. My career was never the same. I mean, I've been working with Kurt Elling, and so Kurt always said he showed me the world. Christian, he made me exist to the world, and I will always be grateful to him for that. And you need different band leaders that can do that. So it's funny now, having been on the other side of been introduced to the world by Christian, and now I'm introducing folks to the world. Like, for instance, in a couple of weeks, I'm going to Japan with Generation Y. We're going to play at Cotton Club,
Nice.
in Tokyo, and I'm taking Langston Hughes, very talented brother from Washington D.C., Anthony Hervey, Tyler Bullock, and Thomas Millivac. Everybody I think everybody has, with the exception of myself, has never been to Japan before. So
that's great.
I'm like, okay,
first time
so here I
experience.
am.
Yeah, bucket list. Yeah.
So that's that's what we're supposed to do. So I'm grateful.
Yeah. It's giving back. I mean, you see the coach in my my handle. I coach high school basketball, right? So I'm out
Nice.
I'm out of St. Joseph Academy out in St. Augustine, which is a Catholic school.
Nice.
So, that's the same thing that I do with coaching high school basketball because I come from a basketball family, been around the game all of my life. So now this is my opportunity to give back to the next generation so they can learn what I know, and then they can experience what I've been able to experience, and hopefully they'll have lifelong relationships. They'll have a passion and a love for the game that'll just carry on not only on the court but off the court. So it's the same thing. It really is.
No, man, it's all connected. All connected.
Yeah, for sure. So listen, man, you're part of launching a jazz radio station here in Jacksonville. And when I tell you how excited I am about that, I'm like, it's about time.
Come here. I'm gonna. So it's funny you say that. Come wave and say hello. My co-host is actually here. Come around this way, Kiana Faircloth, because he just asked me.
Hello.
He just asked about the radio station. So man, Jazz Beyond Tradition, excuse me. Kiana already just shot me a unit. Kiana and I created this idea. Basically what happened was I've been doing work with WJCT, which right?
Yeah.
It's a media company. They have a TV news. They basically run Jacksonville. Absolutely. I know the CEO, David McGowan, and he's been a fan, and he's always been like, hey, Ulysses, how can I support? So he's been very supportive to my nonprofit. He and his wife, they come to all our shows. Well, anyway, he said, Ulysses, come to my office one day. So I came up there, I was on break, and we talked for like 2 hours. And he said, man, all right, now that we've talked, what do you want to do? Like, what do you want to see at WJCT? And I said, well, to be honest, I want to see a jazz radio station. I said, I remember growing up as a kid, and I don't know if you remember this. How long you've been in the Jacksonville area? Okay, so this is before your time. Okay. There's a brother named Naeem Rashid. Okay. He's now in New Orleans, but Naeem had a jazz radio station called Quiet Storm. Really? And it would come on. I feel like it would come on either Saturdays, maybe like Saturday night, like from 8 to 10 or 7 to 10. And my father would listen to it. And so long story short, I said, David, I want to remake that, but in my own way. And it's funny because I didn't know that I was going to be on the radio. I was just saying I wanted somebody to do it. He was like, oh man, that sounds. I was like, so let me know if you got some DJs, And he's like, okay, great. Fast forward, they brought me on as a writer, so I started doing reviews. They loved my reviews, and then they came back to me because I'll just throw this out there. The Jacksonville Jazz Festival had approached me initially about potentially being the artistic director.
Really? Okay.
By the time, and so, which is my dream. It's something I want to do. Long story short,
incredible.
Yeah. So I was excited. I was like, all right, when we getting started? Then they were like, actually, we don't know if we're ready. So I was like, okay, well, in between them saying they don't know if they're ready, I'd already gone to WJCT, and I said, Jacksonville Jazz Festival was going to make me the artistic director. And they were like,
man.
oh my God,
Wow.
Ulysses, great.
Yeah.
So what do you want to do? So I was like, well, what about this radio show idea? So Matt Shaw, shout out to Matt Shaw, he's an incredible editor and whatever. He was like, Ulysses, why don't you do a radio show? And I'm like, dude, I don't know nothing about no radio. I was like, I mean, I know some records I like here and there. And so
Yeah.
I went home that night, man, and I was like, actually, I do want to do radio. I was like, and from the perspective of all my friends, I could hook my friends up.
Right.
I was like, man, I could, right. But you know, I am somewhat smart. And I said, but if I'm going to do radio, because I know I'm not good at, you know, I haven't done it. I said, I got to get the greatest radio DJ in the land to be with me and to partner with me. Okay. And when I thought of that, there's only one person, and there's this woman, Kiana Faircloth, who's been on NPR radio. She interviewed me years ago on a station in DC. She's got a podcast and show called Artemisy. She is a tastemaker. She's an artist advocate. So I was like, the only way I'll do this is if Kiana will do it with me. So I called up Kiana. I was like, Kiana, so I'm thinking about doing this radio show. And Kiana had just finished a stint with WBGO in Jersey.
Yeah.
They brought her on, and she made great.
Yeah,
man. So she made great waves there. She was making noise, featured in New York Times. I mean, she's like doing her thing, right? And so I was like, Kiana, I got this idea. I want to get you back on air. And so long story short, I was like, but I want us to do it together. She's like, okay. I don't really co-host, but I'm open. That's always, she's like, I'm open. I'm like, okay. So man, we sat up like one night to about 1, 2 in the morning, and we just rapped like on the phone. And I was like, Kiana, what do you want to say? And she wanted autonomy, and I want to be able to create playlists that is a blend of new artists today and the tradition. And I said, well, I want to bring up the tradition. So long story short, we came up with the name Jazz Beyond Tradition. Went to Matt, went to the folks at WJCT. Nice. They loved it. And man, we're actually recording now. We're launching in April. We already got 6 episodes. They're themed out, you know. And man, when I tell you I'm so excited about this, I'll give you a little sneak peek of our first episode. It's called The Magic of Jazz Vocalist. And we interviewed KEbnY Nkwele, who's a Juilliard grad. We also interviewed Christy Dashiell. So man, it's gonna be dope. I'm so excited. So man, April we launching, and then yeah, man, it's gonna be happening on WJCT 89.9 News FM and WJCT.org.
I love it, man, because it just never made any sense to me that we have this big jazz festival every year, and we don't have a jazz radio station. Like the two just did not. And it just did not make any sense to me. So the fact that you were able to actually create that, man, salute to you for that. And I'm looking.
Well, thank you. And long term, what I hope to do, and I'm putting it out there. I know you spiritual. I'm naming and claiming it.
Come on,
of the Jacksonville Jazz Festival, I will bring the two worlds together, and truly, you know, we'll do live broadcasts. We'll do a lot of great things. Bringing those synergies together.
Right at the festival.
Right. And even like what you're doing in St. Augustine, right? Like there's got to be a way we can merge. Like maybe I bring you on, you know, have you host some things or do some interviews and bring your audience. So I think that what we have to do is there's a community that loves jazz and a community that loves just culture. And we need to bring them all together, and it needs to surround the festival versus what happens now is the festival shows up and it's kind of this corporate entity and it goes away. And so one of the things that I've talked about as part of my artistic vision for the Jacksonville Jazz Festival is that it needs to be a year-round component. It needs to have a year-round presence. And I think through the radio station, it can happen.
Yes,
so
I agree. So I'll tell you, in terms of St. Augustine, my school, we have a relationship with one of the radio stations. We have a weekly show on there. Shout out to my principal, Principal D. Clemente. He does a St. Joe radio show weekly on their radio station. So we'll talk offline and see what we can.
Whoa.
Yeah, man. Because to your point,
that's crazy.
We can expand this thing, man. And we putting it out there. So, and we got the connections, and it's all about relationships. You know that,
bro. It's so crazy. So Kiana and I can't disclose much of it, but that was one of her goals. She was like, if we do this, yes, I know you have an affinity for Jacksonville, but she was like, we need to get this in other places. So we're already getting. It's funny that you offered to talk about St. Augustine, because we're already getting offers from other markets who are like, we hear y'all, but first of all, because people love Kiana, so they're like, you back on air? We want whatever it is.
Come on, syndication.
Syndication. And so we're already talking about that. And then here you come saying, yo, like, I got a spot.
Confirmation.
So I'm telling you, man, God is in everything, man. So
He is, man.
Yeah. So yes, we will wrap, man. Yeah.
For sure. So now, as we get ready to wrap up, you've accomplished a lot. You're still relatively young. What's still on your list to accomplish that you haven't gotten to yet?
What do I still want to accomplish? I want to be the artistic director of the Jacksonville Jazz Festival.
There you go.
I want to make a lot of money. I don't know if that statement and jazz go hand in hand.
Listen, creatives and money, it can be hit or miss. But continue.
Listen, I want to buy a house. But some other goals. I'm actually going back to school in the fall. I haven't fully announced where, but I actually just got accepted a couple of weeks ago. But I'm going back to get my master's degree. Because one of the things that I want to do is really move up in academia and get into professorship, so that and even at some point I'm going to get my doctorate, because when I look at the things that I'm trying to build, whether it's a festival, whether it is a jazz radio station, or even some other ideas Kiana and I have in terms of the media outlets and growing the brand, I need to be more knowledgeable. And I realize that I've been blessed to do a lot, but I've kind of hit a ceiling. And I'm ready to be taught again. Like, I'm ready for someone to sit me down and say, okay, Ulysses, you've done a lot of things, like, it's been cool, but now let's deepen your roots. Cause I have a course I'm actually teaching right now at Juilliard. It's called Church as Conservatory, where we unpack the impact and the power of the Black church musically and its impact in mainstream media. And I'm teaching it with Dr. Fadara Hadley, who's an ethnomusicologist. And bro, sitting in this class, like, I'm a co-lecturer with her. Sitting in this class with this powerful sister who has her doctorate, she is just schooling me. And I mean, just like listening to her vocabulary, her use of references, and her ability to lecture these kids. I'm like, I need that. Like, I definitely, I'm gifted and I've been blessed, but I realize, like, I need more information. There's things I want to grow. I want to grow in as a lecturer. I want to grow in as a speaker. And there's a point where you need to take a break. So I would say, what's coming up next for me? I'm going to run this radio station with Kiana. She and I are going to have this show. I'm going to have Gen Y. We're going to do some spot dates and do whatever. But I'm taking myself back to school so I can deepen these roots and grow, so that in the next couple of years, as I get more exposure and the opportunity to teach others, I have a deeper well to pull from. So that's what's coming up for me.
Oh, man, that's great. That is absolutely great. All right. So last question. Tell my audience what you already told us what's next with Gen Y. Tell my audience how to connect and follow you on social media. And are you still doing the jam session?
That's going to come back in the summer. So I'm starting the Jazz Jam. It's a thing that happens every summer. We'll bring that back in July. So I'll be probably announcing that soon. But yeah, so I got Gen Y dates. You can go to ulyssesowensjr.com, and I have just click the shows. That's up there. I'm touring a lot, man. Like, I mean, I've already been on the road the last few weeks. Matter of fact, next week I'm in Florida. I'm playing in Orlando, playing in Delray Beach. Then we hit Japan. Then I'm going to Oklahoma next week. I mean, my tour schedule is bananas. So for those that want to catch me, it's enough stuff out there, and we're going everywhere. Like, I'm West Coast, East Coast, Midwest, all of that. So check out the tour schedule, as you mentioned, which I'm so glad you talked about. The radio show is launching in April. If you want to follow me, you could definitely find me on Facebook, but the one I'm really active on is Instagram. That is my favorite outlet. So I'm always dropping videos on there. I mean, I post on there several times a day. Also, my stories, I'm posting motivational stuff, things that inspire me. So yeah, man. So find me on Instagram at Ulysses Owens Jr. _ at ulyssesowensjr.com. And yeah, man, just stay in touch with me. I'm gonna continue to be like you, trying to put light out there. So
yeah, man. Hey, content is king. Content is king. So the more you put out there, and you just keep doing the work, eventually the blessings will come.
Hey, brother. Well, it's a blessing to be able to share with you and to see how you're growing, and you're one of there's like those folks out there, those radio folks and interview folks that, like, They've been with you for a while, and you're one of those people. Even though I was like incredibly busy, I was like, I got to support this cat because I love what he's doing.
Man,
So,
I appreciate you. So listen, man,
appreciate
all the best.
Great.
Really excited
You
about
too.
what's happening. And in the
Cool.
summer, once the jam session comes out, I may come out of retirement. I still got
Please.
my stick and my pedal in the garage.
Come on, man. You've been promising.
So, all right, you got my word. You got my word. I'm going to come out of retirement, come down to the jazz session. I'm only going to play for like 5 minutes because I'm out of shape. So my legs are
we can split it too.
There we go.
I gotta get you. Hey, and I gotta get you on the show. We gotta get you on Jazz Beyond Tradition too. So
say less, man.
So we're gonna wrap.
Anytime. Let's do it.
Cool. I appreciate you, brother.
Best. Thanks for being on.
All right, take care.
All right. That was Ulysses Owens Jr. Really appreciate him for coming on and spending a few minutes with us. Now it's time to. This is it for this episode of the Any Key Video Show. Again, I want to thank Ulysses Owens Jr. for joining me. If you have any questions, comments, or like your brands and services to be advertised and promoted on the show, or if you want your music video to be featured on the show, send an email to KANMmusicPUB@gmail.com. Again, that's KANMmusicPUB@gmail.com. Subscribe to the Minds of Creativity YouTube channel, which is part of the All Sports, All Plays Network, so you can check out the rest of the content and so you can get the alert when new episodes are available. You can become a patron on my Patreon page. Just go to patreon.com/ANYKENY to get exclusive access to behind the scenes video and free show merchandise. Or you can order your merchandise at the online store, which is ANYKENYRadioshow.threadless.com. Again, that's ANYKENYRadioshow.threadless.com. Shout out to all my patrons and people who have ordered merchandise. Really appreciate your support. You can connect with me and follow me on social media at Coach_ANYKENY on Twitter, TikTok, Clubhouse, Instagram, and YouTube, or on my Facebook music page, Any Key Music, which is spelled capital ANY, capital KE, lowercase b, lowercase n, and capital Y. So until next time, remember, be positive on purpose.